and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today. It is Wednesday, which means we are kicking off quarterback rankings. We're going to go through the top 24, couple notable omissions for you guys as well. I'm going to make sure I cover everything for those 2 QB and super flex leagues, which everyone should be a part of. And we're going to finish this video off with some kicker rankings as well. So let's hop into it with this week's quarterback rankings. At number 1, it's a guy that some of you were worried about that we begged you not to be going into week 3, and that is Josh Allen. Now, he exploded last week for 5 total touchdowns, including 1 on the ground, and now he gets the Houston Texans, so he is going to have an awesome encore performance with the boom potential of an exploding volcano. At 2, we have Patty Mahomes. He goes on the road to Philadelphia. Now, after being a driving force in his team's back-to-back losses, I think we are about to witness what mean Mahomes looks like. I think he's going to take out some of that anger on this Philly defense, the same defense that just got absolutely dismantled by Dallas, and I expect a monster game from Mahomes here. Speaking of taking a loss out, at 3 is Tom Brady. Now, he had a okay game. He did throw for 423 yards last week in a loss to the Rams, but he gets the revenge game we've all been waiting for on the road in Foxborough against New England. He's the current QB2. He leads the league with 10 touchdown passes, and I think he gets at least 3 touchdown passes here, and he could approach 400 yards. He is going to feast. At 4 is a guy that we loved last week to bounce back, and he did just that in Justin Herbert. Now, he gets Las Vegas this week, so it's a great matchup. He definitely had a slow start, but since then, he has come to his own. He's posted 4 touchdowns last week after just 2 in the first 2 games of the season. He sits 4th in the league right now with 956 passing yards. At 5, and rounding that out, is Kyler Murray. He has a really tough matchup against the Rams, but we talked about what Tom Brady was able to do with them, and I think that Murray will be fine here. He had a dud last week by his lofty standards with just 1 total touchdown and under 300 passing yards against that Jags defense, but he had 9 touchdowns in his first 2 games, and he is still the overall QB1 on the season. I still say he produces. Don't get cute, start him. At 6 is Jalen Hurts, which actually might be low for him, considering he's coming into this game as the overall QB4. Now, Hurts definitely struggled last week against Dallas, but he was still able to produce as a 3rd top 10 finish in the same amount of tries. He is 2nd in the NFL in rushing yards for quarterbacks, behind only Lamar Jackson, so that definitely helps as far as the production is concerned. His upside and his ceiling is higher because of that, and I think he's going to put up big numbers to keep up with this Kansas City offense that he faces in week 4. At number 7 is a guy who, for my money, had the absolute best game of all quarterbacks last week, and that would be one Matthew Stafford. He gets an Arizona defense who hasn't really been stopping anyone. He was able to throw for 4 touchdowns and 343 yards against the Bucs defense that is much better, and I think that he performs at a high-end QB1 level. Russell Wilson slides in at number 8, and he faces a Niners defense on the road. Now, Wilson struggled a little bit last week, recording only 1 touchdown after a hot start. He hasn't really added a ton on the ground, just 32 yards rushing in the first 3 games. You don't love to see that, but he is averaging nearly 300 yards passing a game, and he is tops in the league as far as average depth of throw with 10.4 yards per attempt to go with the 7 touchdowns. After starting the season with 2 top 10 finishes, I think he gets there again. We have Aaron Rodgers at number 9. Now, he's been all over the place this year with QB finishes of 34, 5, and then 16 last week. I think this looks certainly like a tough matchup on paper, but remember, Joe Burrow was able to throw for 3 touchdown passes last week in Pittsburgh, and that was without his wide receiver 2 in T. Higgins. I think Rodgers continues to get back on track and get into the top 10 this week and potentially hit 300 yards passing for the first time this season. Our final spot in the top 10 goes to Lamar Jackson. Now, he has a tough matchup on the road against Denver. He continues to struggle through the air, but honestly, fantasy managers don't care because he is the current QB5. He is 3rd overall in the league in rushing yards with 251. Now, this isn't a matchup we love like we talked about, but I think he does enough with his combination of yardage on the ground and in the air to make him worth a QB1 start. Some people were off on our number 11 guy last week, but we certainly were not. We really liked Derek Carr, and he produced in a big way. He leads the league, averaging over 400 yards passing a game. Now, I'm not quite expecting those kind of numbers here, especially with Josh Jacobs likely returning, but it's certainly not out of the question. Now, he hasn't finished worse than a QB 11 on the week, and that is exactly where we have him. He has 6 touchdowns coming into this game, and there may be a little concern that more rushing touchdowns come up because the Los Angeles Chargers are far more susceptible on the ground, but I still like him to get 1 or maybe 2 against LA. Now, rounding out our QB1s and sliding into number 12 is Kirk Cousins against Cleveland. My first question is, who the heck is this guy? Kirk Cousins right now is QB6 on the season. He's averaging 306 yards a game. He is 4th in the league with 8 touchdown passes, and he has also been consistent. He has QB finishes of 13, 6, and 9. Now, this is a good matchup with Cleveland, and if he can stay upright, he should produce big numbers once again and slides in as a low-end QB1. At 13, we see Joe Burrow, and he gets that putrid Jags defense. Now, he started the season with 3 minus matchups, but he still has 7 touchdowns and is completing almost 71% of his passes. This is obviously a great matchup. I expect Burrow to ball out. There is boom potential for him. All the way down at 14, we finally find Dak Prescott. Now, he's just QB 15 on the year, and he gets another tough matchup here against a ferocious Carolina D. He's averaging 2 touchdowns a game, but is tops in the league in completion percentage at 77.5%. He falls just outside of our QB1 range, but I still expect him to produce enough to make it worth a start. A surprise addition at number 15 is Taylor Bud Lightikey. He gets a good matchup against Atlanta and has QB finishes of 12th and 9th in his only 2 starts this year. Yeah, that's real. Now, in those games, he has 548 yards passing, 27 yards rushing, and 5 total touchdowns. This is a great matchup against a very weak Atlanta secondary, and there is boom potential for him as a high-end QB2. At 16 is a guy we really liked a lot last week, and he was able to produce in a big way, albeit helping himself out with those 2 rushing touchdowns, and that would be Sammy Darnold. He gets Dallas here. He is currently the QB8 and is averaging nearly 300 yards passing with a rushing and passing touchdown every game. We know Dallas defense has struggled, and they're going to have to air it out a little bit more on the Carolina side of things because CMC is out for a couple weeks. Now, at number 17, we have Ryan Tannehill. He goes on the road against the Jets. He is averaging 252 yards passing and 33 yards rushing a game. So we love to see that work on the ground. That really helps him out. Now, he has only 5 total touchdowns on the year, but we like the matchup enough to slide him in here at 17. At 18, we have Teddy Bridgewater, and he gets the Baltimore Ravens at home. Now, Teddy has 2 top 15 finishes in 3 tries. However, his 4 total touchdowns this year mean his ceiling is fairly low, but he is averaging almost 275 yards passing a game, which is solid enough to make him a safe mid-tier QB2. At number 19 is a guy who probably should be higher, but he certainly burned us last week in a horrible performance against the Atlanta Falcons, and that would be Daniel Jones. Now, he goes on the road against New Orleans and comes in as the current QB10. However, I just think that there's a lot of boom and bust potential here. You never know which Daniel Jones you're going to get. His propensity for turnovers is certainly concerning, but the upside is there as well because he has finishes of QB4 and QB14. I think that he settles somewhere in the middle of that. The last of our top 20 is Baker Mayfield, and he gets the Vikings on the road. Now, he has back-to-back top 18 finishes, which you love, but he is currently still just the QB 23, which you don't. He has only 3 total touchdowns in 3 weeks. I think he's fairly safe. I don't see a ton of upside here. He should be just fine, but not spectacular against the Vikings. At 21, we see the rookie, Trevor Lawrence. He goes on the road against Cincinnati. Now, he's definitely struggled with interceptions so far this year, recording 7, but I think volume in this game should be enough if Jacksonville wants to keep up with the Bengals for him to produce low-end QB2 numbers. Matt Ryan slides in here for us at number 22, and he has finished QB 16 and QB 22 over the last 2 weeks. I would also say that the Washington football team's defense hasn't been what we expected it to be coming in, not nearly as scary, and so you don't hate the matchup. He also has 4 touchdowns in his last 2 games, which gives us some hope. At 23 is honestly a guy that I never expected to be in these rankings, and that is Jimmy Garoppolo. He gets Seattle at home this week, and although Trey Lance definitely caps his upside, he still hasn't finished worse than QB 25 in any single week. He has 4 touchdowns in his last 2 games, just like Ryan, and they're gonna need to score to keep up with Seattle. The last guy on this list, let's call it a hunch, is Justin Fields at 24. He gets Detroit at home. Now, if any of you saw the game against Cleveland, you're probably thinking I'm a crazy person right now, but hear me out. We throw that week away and pray it was just a mirage because the play calling was absolutely horrible. He didn't have any time to operate against that ferocious front 7 from Cleveland, and Detroit's defense is a little bit of a different story. So I love the matchup, and I think this is the prime get-right game for him. A couple notable omissions in this one are Ben Roethlisberger, who goes on the road in Lambeau, and Jared Goff, who goes on the road in Soldier Field. And now let's quickly run over our rankings for kickers for this week. At 1, I have Matt Gay going against the Arizona Cardinals. At 2, Brandon McManus, who faces the Ravens. At 3, I have Mr. 66-yard doinker and in-man himself, Justin Tucker, who goes on the road to Mile High. At 4, it's Greg Joseph, who hit all 3 of his field goals that didn't matter against Cleveland. At 5, I have Harrison Butker facing the Philadelphia Eagles on the road. At 6, Daniel Carlson and that high-powered Oakland offense goes on the road against the LA Chargers. 7, we have Evan McPherson facing the Jags, and Ryan Suckup against the New England Patriots on the road comes in at number 8. At 9, we have Tyler Bass and that high-powered Buffalo Bills offense facing Houston, and rounding out the top 10 is Mason Crosby for Green Bay facing the Steelers. San Francisco 49ers kicker Robbie Gould slides in here at number 11. They face the Seahawks at home. And then number 12, a guy that I didn't even want to add because I don't want to have to say his name, Tristan Vizcaino against the Las Vegas Raiders is our final kicker spot for the week. Some notable omissions are going to be Greg Zuerlein against Carolina and that tough defense, and then Jake Elliott against the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're new to the channel, or if you haven't done it yet, please like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate all of your support. If you have any questions, whether that's start sit, should I bench this guy, please drop those down below. I would love to answer. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Abraham Opatz. We'll see you next time.